This is Whitleys Strieber's Dreamland. Expert hosts like William Henry on Secrets of the Past, Jim Mars on Politics and Conspiracy, Ann Strieber on Matters of the Spirit, and Whitley Strieber on Aliens, UFOs, and who knows what else. And weekly science reporter, Emmy Award winner Linda Moulton Howe. We say it like it is. We take you deeper, down where the real secrets lie. Dreamland. Welcome to the edge of the world.
Welcome to Dreamland. This is Marla Fries, and I'm your host today. My guest is Dr. John Lerma, who currently serves as the inpatient medical director for the internationally renowned TMC Hospice, located in the heart of the largest medical center in the world, the Medical Center of Houston, Texas. After graduating with honors from the University of Texas in Austin with a pharmacy degree, he entered the University of Texas San Antonio Medical School and received his board certification in both internal medicine as well as hospice medicine. For the last 10 years, he has spent his time taking care of the terminally ill. And he has successfully interviewed thousands of terminally ill patients and recorded over 500 conversations with patients on the verge of death. His book, Into the Light, shares some of those amazing pre-death and afterlife stories. Welcome, Dr. John Lerma. My first question to you, John, is what does no harm mean?
Do no harm means let's keep everybody comfortable. Let's not put them in the ICU on a ventilator without their family. And it was something that I just really, truly believed, and something Whitley and I had, when Whitley was living in San Antonio, I would talk to him about a lot of these stories that I started hearing, these people telling me things as they were dying, and it was these AIDS patients. And it wasn't just the typical IV drug users. These were women and children who were being affected, and it really just touched my heart.
Right.
And,
there's the story when you were in San Antonio that you speak about in the book where there was a car accident of 5 people.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. That was probably one of the greater impetus into leading me into more of the research. And it was I was an intern at that point, and there's a certain amount of people in the ER, and in the ER you triage the people with the greatest percentage for survival will get the top dogs in the medical field, the surgeons, the orthopedic surgeons, and people who really don't have much chance for survival will get they'll still get great care, but they'll involve the resident and the intern. And I got involved in one patient who probably 70, 80 plus year old gentleman, Hispanic, who had a heart attack and didn't appear to probably survive. And it was this gentleman that provided probably an awe-inspiring information about the afterlife. He had a near-death experience.
Oh, great.
And the book is more really about pre-death experiences, people who are still consciously aware of what's going on in their environment. They have not died yet, but they're seeing what the near-death people are seeing.
Well, it's really fascinating, John, because you talk about them seeing a lot of angelic beings.
Yes. And when I say angelic beings, it's really more spiritual beings.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's probably less angels, if you say the typical winged angel. I don't think they see that's that common. What people do see is energy. They see people lit up, shapes of people coming in, usually around 4 weeks before. We almost got it down to a science now.
Wow.
It really is incredible. After the first 500, after the first 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 patients, you start seeing the same thing. And it's transcultural, trans-religion. It Muslims, Christians, Buddhists, murderers, atheists, agnostics. Right. They're all seeing the same thing. And
tell us, what are they seeing?
They're seeing at 4 weeks before they're dying, while they're still doing pretty well, a person, a very well-lit person, I guess a lot of energy around them coming towards them, not communicating with them yet, something which I found out later, they're waiting for the person to invite them in. And what I've heard, it's a lot about your free will, that the other side really, truly respects free will. So they wait until you ask them in or you invite them. And most people will say, who are you? What are you doing? And at that point, they come in and this is who we are. We're here to comfort you. And it's almost like the hospice on the other side, the comforting part of the other dimension. And they come in and they start reviewing their life, and nowhere near this fire and brimstone thing, okay? And that is
that's good news.
That is what really pushed me to want to write this book. I said, I was raised Catholic, and my mom is part Japanese and some Buddhist. I'm a Buddha-cast, I guess, a New Age Buddha-cast.
I like that.
I'm not sure what that means, but at any rate, I'm really pretty open. I'm not religious. I'm a scientist with a real big feeling of spirituality and comfort for the human being. And but yeah, these people come in and they're very comforting, non-condemning, non-judgmental, and these people who are dying think they're going to be condemning and judgmental.
And they're not.
And they're not. And once they get over that, that's what they're sharing with me during these experiences. And just telling me that these people are loving, that they're wanting them to understand that the key to the condemnation and the judgment is not from God or whoever is on the other side that created us, who we never really ever see, on a day-to-day basis, and then we're supposed to be going to hell if we don't do the right thing. Well, that's all just a bunch of, it's just a farce.
Right. You say in your book. Okay.
It really is. It really is. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh no, you're just saying you're reiterating what you say in the book, which is there's allowances in interpretation of the Bible and all of the religious teachings that we've been
not just the Bible, the Quran, the Torah, name it. Every little the Tibetan book of the dead, the Egyptian book of the dead. All of them. It's just human nature. Who wrote these things? How do we know that, it was an inspiration from God is what they say. That's how the religious leaders say that. Oh, it was an inspired word of God. Well, the one thing that is just common, and now, the reality now, I said 2,000, but it really in reality, indirectly, it's been over 30 or 40,000 that I have interviewed.
30 or, wow.
40,000, yes ma'am.
Staggering.
That's over about a 15-year period. Most of those were not directly my patients, but the doctors would allow me to go in and interview these people. And I'm telling you, 99.9999% had a very exhilarating, exalting experience at their deathbed.
Well, John, I've talked to a lot of people as a medium who are dead, and I am always amazed at the details that they present when they come through about their illness and if they were really ill, how glad they were to be out of their body. And sometimes, they even talk about who came to meet them. Are you seeing that as well? Loved ones who are showing up saying, I'm going to cross you over?
Absolutely, and it's almost clockwork, like I said. Right, and it's almost about 4 weeks. My dad died about 2 or 3 months ago, and he did the same thing. But, the funny thing about my dad, he I guess just like a dad they really don't believe their sons. Right. I wrote this book, and he goes, you know what, son, as he was dying of a heart problem, so he could still communicate. I didn't truly believe everything in this book commented on. And he goes, but I have to say, it's true. They're here.
Wow.
The beings are here, and he described it perfectly for me. He was Catholic, and he goes, right as you're dying, you're right about 4 weeks, you see somebody. Somebody does come to the door or is in your home. My dad was reading a newspaper, doing fine 4 weeks before his death. He hears some rustling in the house. He goes out, and he thinks it's my mom. Well, it's this gentleman that he knew, a friend of his that had passed away during the war. He was in World War II in the Navy. And he looks at him, and he lasted only 2 or 3 seconds, but long enough to know that, and enough to know that it was really a solid being, skin and everything. And he told him, we will be back for you. We're here to comfort you. And boom, just disappears, and short enough for him to almost question himself.
Well, John, we're going to hear a little bit more about that story, but we're going to take a break.
Absolutely.
And we'll be right back.
Thank you.
Dreamland's new resident psychic medium has quite a history as a psychic. She has worked for police forces for years and helped to solve crimes. She is good at what she does, or she would not be one of our expert hosts here on Dreamland. And you can take advantage of her skills by going to her website, marlafrees.com. That's MarlaFrees.com. You take it from there. Marla will give you a reading. She has group sessions. There's all kinds of ways of getting in touch with her and making use of her skills. Go to marlafrees.com.
Welcome back to Dreamland. This is Marla Frees, and I have today with us Dr. John Lerma, and he was just describing his experience with his own father's passing and what actually happened right before he died. Wow.
Yes. Yeah, and it was, I mean, just in short, it was just a beautiful, he pretty much just corroborated as a father, telling me, you know what, son, what they told you, I have to say I am seeing it, but let me explain it to you a little more, really what they're seeing. It's not the feathers and the typical thing, although some do see that, and where that comes from is that apparently the other side tries to come in a very familiar environment to not alarm you, to be able to draw you from your body, because we as humans try to stay in the familiar, almost like abusive relationships. Abusive women, you always hear, they want to stay in that relationship.
Right.
And it's the same thing. You may be seeing God, or you may be seeing these wonderful beings or the heavenly realm, but people still don't want to go. So they have to figure out a way to get you, to draw you towards that way. So for my dad, he was a very open gentleman, and he saw these beings. They were white beings, and right as he was dying, he said that you pull away from your body. And he says, right when you pull away from your body, you start to see everything as it really is in the universe. It's energy. And you know, I have a partial physics background. I studied a little bit of quantum physics while I did my pharmacy degree. And so that made a lot of sense to me. It really, truly is energy. And he goes, how I am seeing you right now, son, is just as light. White light with a blue center and gold center right around your chest area. I can no longer see your body. Everything around us, the particle matter, the walls, the carpet, name it, all has the same white light. He called it photons.
So we're all the same, basically, then.
Emitting photons, with the exception that it didn't have that blue center light. And I would suspect that that's our soul. Mm-hmm. And he says, I would love for you to keep doing this, keep pushing, keep telling people that it's wonderful, that yes, right now my mom and my dad are right here in the room, and just like everyone else, from 4 weeks they see somebody, then sparsely in between, up until the last 2 or 3 days, where they just see droves and droves of spiritual beings, along with finally their family, their deceased family,
and
who are there to just love them.
And I hope it's people that they want to see.
Always, always, always. The interesting part is sometimes they don't see certain people they think they would see. Like a father and mother, they'll only see a mother. And I'm not sure what that's about.
Well, I'm fascinated by one of the stories in your book about the 78-year-old Baptist minister who relished putting the fear of God into people for 50 years and the opportunity that he had before he died to see the error of his ways. Tell me about this.
Well, that story, God, it's a wonderful story, and it's probably a lot more than it's been a while that I can remember. But
well,
yes,
he was a hardline fundamentalist Christian who spent his ministry trying to convince homosexuals that they were possessed and needed exorcisms.
Absolutely. and you know, I'm out of Houston now. I lived in San Antonio, and Houston's got a big gay section, over 100,000 people, and he would go there in that area and just preach almost every Sunday. And fire and brimstone, he would come out on TV. Everybody knew him, and he really, truly believed that. But at the very end, it's all psychological. He was projecting his own fears,
right,
his own insecurities, the fact that he did not fall in love with the woman that he really loved, that he married just for show, for his community, marrying what he thinks is the right person, that they would accept him into the pulpit.
And didn't he come to terms with the fact that about his understanding about people that are of the same sex and the love between them?
Absolutely. The spiritual beings, that was one of, everyone's, it's like a fingerprint. As you die, everyone's got their own special review. And it's not a horrible, it's a review, it's a debriefing of sorts, if you will.
And this happens before, you say?
Yes, always, at least about a week before. That way, the last few days, the negotiation that is occurring, I call it negotiation.
Oh, good. Tell me about that.
Well, the title of the book should have been Negotiating with Angels, but you know how publishers are, they change the names, but it's okay. And but they negotiate. They negotiate to stay out of in an unconditional manner to make sure that their family is ready. And it's really beautiful. And so this whole thing about that, your time is set, it is a done deal, that's not true. Or at least from what my patients tell me. And that you can negotiate, we have that free will to continue to stay in our body and suffer. And they choose to do that.
And
however,
they choose to do it to teach their family something? Is that correct, John?
Well, I don't know if it's so much to teach them, to give them the opportunity to let go if they had any kind of ill feeling with each other, to give them that period of time to find forgiveness. Because here's the thing, Marla, they know they're seeing the beauty on the other side. They feel guilty almost because they're going to a peaceful, blissful place, and they're leaving their loved one in this world now that they can see for what it is. It's a tough world.
Right.
And so they're going, okay, I've got to at least give them this gift. And they will, God or angels or whoever, give me the time. And they do. And apparently the reason it is allowed or it works in your body is because it's unconditional and it's unselfish, the most unselfish thing you'll ever do. And it does. And it most of the time always works because the angels or the spiritual beings that have knowledge of the future can look into the souls of the individuals that are having issues with the patient dying and be able to see if that's possible. And that negotiation occurs, and they go, well, you know what, sir, we don't think it's going to happen, so why don't you just go ahead and just come on with us? Or, yes, it's going to happen, but it's going to take about 2 weeks.
Well, doesn't it sound like prayer is really important in this area for everyone, both the living as well as those who are passing on?
Yeah, and you can call it whatever, prayer. Like the patients say, the other side, they're not hooked up on words. It's meditation, prayer, just thinking, just sitting down and observing, reviewing your life on a day-to-day basis. Many of us do that when we come from work, and that's what it is. That's what prayer is.
Right.
But we get stuck on that term, and that's what they tell me.
Well, I totally agree with you. The meditation, the prayer, the reflection.
That's what it is. It's reflection and looking within yourself and knowing I am imperfect. That's how we were born. We all make mistakes. I have to embrace as much my dark side or my weak side. They call it the weak side or the immature side, as much as my mature side. And what we're here to do is to try to just know who we are and try to just love ourselves for who we are and forgive ourselves.
Yes,
and try to move
the
forward.
Self-forgiveness, right before you die.
And that is the hell, I think, that it was misconstrued. This is what my patients, the Baptist minister especially told me. Because it was the Baptist minister story. He told me, you know what hell is? Hell is what you make it for yourself. If all you did, like that murderer, if all you did was darkness and you were taught and you came from that place, you were filled with that energy. Energy is pure. You can either put a negative charge on it or a positive charge on it. Okay? It's the same energy. And so a lot of people end up being filled with this negative side and this darkness and hopelessness and fearfulness and And that's what, at the end of life, that's what they know. How do you get rid of that at the end of life? And that is what the other side is saying, that is so important to understand. There are consequences to how you are going to have to review your life at the end. But I have to say, on a good note, everybody ends up finding it. Some take a little longer.
Everybody ends up what?
Everybody ends up finding that peacefulness at the end. And,
well, that's good to hear.
And they do. Uh-huh.
John, in you're getting ready to publish this book, we're going to talk about, in just a few minutes, about the controversy that kind of came up around this with your colleagues and your hospital executives.
Yes,
so let's take a little break, and we'll be right back.
Absolutely.
This is Marla Fries for Dreamland, and I have Dr. John Lerma. John, please tell us what the process was when you wanted to come out with this book.
Well, word got out, and working with a great hospital system here at the great Texas Medical Center. It is the largest medical center in the world. There is a cancer institute that is the world renowned, probably the number one next to Sloan Kettering, that people come from all over. So they're very much they're very skeptic, they're very research-oriented. So here I come. I'm starting to talk to these patients about spirituality. And what I mean by not religion, but just who they are, what they're feeling, what do they believe in, and what makes them comfortable, things that none of the doctors talk about. They don't teach us that in med school.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, hospice now, like MD Anderson now, the Cancer Institute, has a program now to teach palliative and hospice medicine. They have moved in that direction now. And last year they had, the first time ever, a near-death conference. So go.
Wow.
And that was after my book was published. So I think things opened up. But yes, I was almost forced to quit. I was almost given an ultimatum: either I stop the book, or I'm gone.
Wow.
And I knew at that point that it didn't matter. I know that the powers that be wanted me to do this. My patients who were dying told me to do it.
Well, yeah.
And I did it, and you know what? They embraced it afterwards. But yes, I was faced with a lot of criticism, but it needed to come out, and there are very few doctors out in there right now in hospice and palliative medicine who are willing to come out and talk about this. But I will tell you this, Marla. The University of Virginia, the University of Arizona, Gary Schwartz.
Yes, of course.
Okay. And there's Bruce Grayson, a very, very well-known.
Yes.
They've gotten funding from the government now to look, and that maybe we can talk about that, to look at what is going on. Why are these people seeing these beings? What part of the brain is doing that? And of course, they're coming from the scientific standpoint. And I believe that the science and spirituality are essentially one. You need one to explain the other. And so we know now we're moving in that direction.
Well, everybody should read Schwartz's Afterlife experiments. I was involved in that program for a little while, and it's astonishing. People are constantly saying, well, how do we prove these people are still around after death? And Dr. Schwartz is doing it.
I think it's beautiful. He's a wonderful man. He read my book, and my book's more inspirational, and it just goes together with his book and the other books of Gary. It sort of balances it out. But yes, and you know what they're doing now, the latest thing is, well, of course, the PET scans. They were doing MRIs, CAT scans to try to determine, Marla, what is a hallucination and what is a vision, which we call now, I sort of coined the term nonlinear conscious awareness. They're consciously aware of the nonlinear side. And so we really know now there is a major, major difference. Doctors would just put everything into hallucination.
Well, I'm sure they're all trying to say that, these are hallucinations based on drugs.
Absolutely.
So what's this elucidation research that you're doing?
Well, first of all, hallucinations for the listeners out there, and we all have seen people probably go through this, but very confused state. It usually has to do with chemicals in your body that build up and are just totally infect the brain. You see, and when you do see things, okay, it's never deceased loved ones, never spiritual beings. It's always something about your life, your work. Like last week, or this gentleman was a fisherman dying. Well, he's hallucinating. He was like casting out his net and so forth, and that's a hallucination. When they wake up, they don't recall one bit of it, okay? Right. And it's usually, there's a cost to it that we can treat. Dehydration, liver problems, something, an infection. There's always a cost for it. Now, nonlinear conscious awareness or vision, there's no cost for that. These people are oriented to person, place, and time. They know who they are, and they can recall everything as vividly as their life, what they're seeing there. And that we know now. So what we're looking at, we're going, okay, well, let's do a PET scan to see what part of the brain is being lit. Well, the hard thing is that hallucinations last 2-3 seconds to about 10-20 minutes. Okay. It's trying to get them down to the lab into the X-ray machine. Well, we did, and we finally did, and we saw that the PET scan, which is it observes the blood flow in an area of the brain, and not just the brain, the whole body, that's working really hard. Well, it was real sparse, and it comes out in yellow to red colors where there's the greatest glucose metabolism. When we caught one on a vision, which was right before they died, 2 or 3 days, it's constant. So those were a little easier. They're seeing everybody constantly in the room. They're no longer 2 or 3 second vision. So you know what? This was incredible.
Wow.
Almost the entire brain was lit up, more so the temporal lobes. And the temporal lobes, we know, Marla, as you know, probably know, that they're responsible now. Scientists are pretty clear that's where ESP comes from.
Yes, right.
Telekinesis and so forth. That's where these neuroscientists they stimulated it. People saw the light. Does that mean there's no God? No, that doesn't mean there's no God. It just means that that's just the way it's made and facilitated. And so that's where we're at. That's where we're at.
Well, it's just amazing, John. No one wants to watch anybody, whether it's a parent, a child, a spouse, or even an animal, suffer from any illness. So when we come back, I'd like to hear what we can do when we have this opportunity to help someone in a terminal illness. What do you suggest we do to help them on their journey? Amen. We'll be right back. This is Marla Fries for Dreamland, and I'm so pleased to have Dr. John Lerma, who has been working with terminally ill patients and diagnosing their illnesses and taking care of their prospects of life after death and what happens before they die. So, John, please help us understand what we can do to help people who are suffering and as loved ones when we're sitting there watching them get to that stage of death.
Well, and I'm glad you said that because that is probably the toughest part of my job is getting family to understand what they need to do, and that is letting go and closure is the big thing. People need, first of all, and I say need, I don't like using that word, but it almost is imperative because there's a short period of time. They don't have a whole lot of time to resolve issues. The first thing is if people can start talking to their families now, just try to address issues now before they're on their deathbed. That's the first key thing. But if that's not possible, the thing to do is to understand, keep their family member, number one, comfortable. Over 80% of people out there will not. They don't see it that way, but they want to keep feeding them when their kidneys aren't working, when their lungs are full of fluid, and they're pushing us, and all they're doing is they're drowning them.
Right.
People have to understand that at the end of life, it's not like you have a flu or an illness that's going to improve, and I could see how the food would work. Well, it doesn't. All food is 80% water. Everyone dies exactly the same. Everyone's body does the same thing, whether it's Alzheimer's, cancer, dementia, heart attack. At the very end of life, you stop eating, and there's a reason. The body knows why it's doing that, because the kidneys are about to fail.
Right.
And when your kidneys fail, they cannot get rid of the fluid. And what do people do? Well, they do what they were taught, the nurturing. They want to feed.
Oh, and they're terrified. They want to fix the situation. Maybe if I feed you, you'll get better.
Absolutely. And all they're doing is they're suffocating.
Mm.
They are actually accelerating the death, because now they're filling where's the fluid going to go? Well, into the next largest cavity, and that's the lung cavity. And that's why you hear a lot of people who are passing, it's a rattle of sorts. They call it the death rattle.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest thing to control. But lately, I have to say, more and more people are really becoming aware that doctors are teaching that more, that there's no balance. It's one or the other. You feed them at this point, well, you suffocate them. If you don't, they're going to be comfortable, because the brain, the centers of the brain that desire food no longer desire it. And that, and we comfort them. We say, hey, we love what you're trying to do to your family member, but it's really hurting. So that's the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
Once you do that and you make sure that they are getting their morphine, their opiates, and it's not so much for the pain, Marla. We know now the only drug that's going to keep somebody from suffocating are opiates. Opiates have an effect on the brain to decrease the awareness of that suffocation.
Wow.
Okay. And my dad, I did that with him, and at the very end I said, Dad, clearly his nail beds were blue. Clearly he was in low oxygen state. He did not. He told me, I don't feel like I'm suffocating.
Oh, good.
And that's very clear, and it made me feel good that I could share that with my patients and other people. But that's the other thing to do. And then once the body is comfortable and the mind is comfortable, because there's no way you can talk to them when they're not comfortable about personal issues, then one by one, people need to go in there and spend quality time, 5 minutes, 2 minutes. Dad, mom, sister, I love you. And being honest,
right.
I'd hate for you to go, but I know this is reality, and to give them purpose. Because you know what, Marla, we do keep going. Yes. Like Einstein said, energy is neither created nor destroyed. Yeah. It just changes form. We, as an intelligent being, are changing form, and so we are going to exist. And so giving them purpose to help them from the other side. And when that happens, the patient who's passing, all they want to know, see, they already know the truth. Mm-hmm. They're seeing the other side. They already know everything. So it's not like you're trying to help them. They're trying to help us. And people don't understand that.
And it's also classic, John, that sometimes they will wait until we all get there.
Absolutely. And more often than not, Marla, the one thing that I always tell patients, don't try to stay around the bed 24 hours a day, because 90% of the studies show that they will wait till people walk out. Granted, there may be one or two people that they feel real comfortable with, and so you come in, give them their time, talk, and step out. Most people will pass when you walk out, and we hear stories all the time. Oh, I went to see my dad, and I stepped out, and they called me, and it passed.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was done intentionally. And people who are in the room constantly, all they'll do is they'll prolong the death. Okay.
Well, my mother-in-law, when she was passing, had a stroke, and she was not verbal, and she could not hear, and she was just on the verge, and we were talking about her, I'd say maybe 12 feet away, and talking about the pneumonia was going to kill her. And we heard her say, I didn't know I had pneumonia. And this was the first time we had heard her speak in 3 months.
And how soon did she pass away? Or?
Oh, within probably, the next day, I would say.
Okay, perfect. That's something that the next thing I want to talk about. That's called the surge of energy. People are given this surge. And we know part of it has to do with the blood flow to the brain increases. But another part is that my patients say that it's a spiritual energy from the other side. It's giving them that last little hurrah. Some people can wake up and talk. People who are deaf can hear.
Yes, we were so surprised. She had a hearing problem for years.
But I will have to say this, and you will hear every hospice around the country and around the world tell each family member, talk to them, because they can hear. Hearing is the last thing to go, and even if it's physically the hearing is gone, something about from the spiritual side. And I'm telling you, every hospice, if you call, anyone call, they will tell you stories like this. It's that common. And so, yes, I would ask people to just keep talking to them. I had this little boy in the first story in the book, the little boy without his eyes.
Yes. Oh.
He had retinal cancer. They took him out, and he could see me. But how could he see me? Through the angels, or through his. He called them angels. He really did. And but dementia patients can talk. I had a lady last week who had a myocardial infarction, a heart attack. Decided not to do anything. She was 80 years old. She came into the inpatient unit. I'm checking her out. No blood pressure, no pulse. I could not hear her heart rate with my stethoscope. She's talking away, telling her daughter, her husband, everybody was there, not to worry, that they would be back for her in a short period of time and support her. And she died like 2 minutes later, but her body was almost dead. And she looked at me and she goes, I know, my body's dead. She told me that. And I go, okay, so they're giving you energy. And she goes, yes, how do you know? She goes, because all my patients tell me stuff like this. And so it
wow.
But, you know, and it was really beautiful because that lady told me that she felt she wasn't worthy, the typical Catholic or Christian that didn't go to church. Mm-hmm. She said that the spirit, her supreme being came down and said that is not the way it works, that he loves us all.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. It's so important for our listeners to hear that, too, because, you know, none of us want to be stuck in the religious dogma.
Oh, God.
Or the guilt.
You know what? They told me that is fading away over the next 100 years, that a lot of the people who feel that way, we're slowly going to be transitioning towards the heavenly realm, I guess. And new kids are being born that have this new ideology of the way it really should be.
Right. It's a consciousness. It's an awareness that's happening. Right, John?
Exactly. And it's really helped my life, I have to tell you that.
Well, I think that your book is going to help a lot of people's lives. It is called Into the Light, and it is a fascinating opportunity to look at what perhaps transpires before and after we die. And this is Marla Fries for Dreamland, and we're talking with Dr. John Lerma. John, I want to ask you what you think happened to me just a few weeks ago. One of my dear friends passed, and she was 3,000 miles away, and I had been in prayer and hoping that she would transition easily. All of her relatives were around her. Mm-hmm. And I felt this amazing surge come through my body. I had been crying a lot. And it just came through the bottom of my soul and out through the top of my head, and I went, oh, I think she's out. And found out that she had passed an hour later. But in your experience, what was that for me?
Well,
have you heard
not totally
this?
Clear, but it's interesting you are asking me. I'm working on a other research project, and it's in our survivors, the people around the room, people after death, and I hear that very, very frequently. They can be thousands of miles away or right in the same room. And I ask my patients that are, other ones that are dying. I'll ask them that, and they go, "Oh, that's us. That's our spirit. We can be in many places at once. That's how we work more than anything. Our souls connect. Mm-hmm. We are all connected. That's the bottom line, and that's why we have to all work towards peace and love, because we're all in this together." And so it attracts. And apparently people who are in the same friendship, same family, develop a certain frequency. That's what they're telling me.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
It's a frequency that will look for it, just like a radio station or so forth that you tune into.
A heat-seeking missile, yes.
And it will find you. It will find you, and it will give it to you. Now, here's the thing. Some people will last for a day, seconds, minutes. Others for a few weeks. And what I figured out what we figured out now, I've interviewed about 400 people, mainly spouses. They say that it's somewhere for them around a 7-week period. And right after the 7-week period, they sometimes see their loved one, usually in the bedroom, when they're least expecting it. and they tell them, we're ready to go. Are you going to be okay?
Right.
We have to go and further our learning, and that's what they say. And so they move on, and so all of a sudden we don't feel them any longer. But they do give us that comfort right after they're dying, or right during their death as well. Many people, look, there's a story of this gentleman who really, incredibly, he was from Roswell, New Mexico. He was out there during the UFO crash, which is a really incredible story anyway, aside from that. But as he was dying, he had been in the inpatient unit for 2 weeks. Well, his family and friends lived all around his house. Well, they saw him mowing the grass.
Oh.
And Greg sat down like he normally did, and then afterwards, and drinking his lemonade, waved. And so they called his wife, and he goes, we didn't know he's back. He's doing great. He goes, what are you talking about? He just passed away.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, that's
okay?
Great.
And it wasn't just one person. It was several people.
Uh-huh.
And so it's that bilocation. There's a quantum physics term for that, and as well, that we can be in more places than one. And so what you're saying is it was her. She was out comforting you.
Well, it was interesting because my husband had never met her, and he came from outside and said, I think Diane just came to visit me. And felt
Isn't that great?
Yeah,
huh?
it was just amazing. And of course,
if we open ourselves to it, Marla, there's just so much interference in our life. But if we really take time, just a few minutes out of the day to meditate, we will pick up all that. All of us have that ability.
Well, it is my intention, John, to try and help people understand that communicating with loved ones is something that we can all do, and it's just been because of the way that we were raised that keeps us from looking at that.
Right. Well, and Marla, and you have that ability. You have an ability that is worked on, that is a little more perfected than most of us. And so I would say that's another big reason why she came to you. But like my patients say, we all have that ability. And a good book to read, have you read the DMT molecule, the God molecule?
No. Who's that by?
Dr. Strassman. Mm-hmm. And what they found was this dimethyltryptamine, which is similar to LSD, but it's in our pineal gland, and it's released somewhere during very stressful periods or our death. And what it does, it works on the entire brain, especially the temporal lobe, to reconnect our nerves and our neurons so that we can see the other side. And these people are having these incredible, that's how they're having these incredible visions. So we were checking those levels, and they are very, very high at the end of life, along with serotonin.
That's amazing to find out, and I'm so glad that there's scientific research to prove some of these things as well. And in relationship to my girlfriend, we talked about, we had 6 months to plan her death. 6 months to plan the funeral, 6 months to talk about this. So we were in constant communication about it. But still, it still does not remove the difficulty. Excuse me, what?
And that's wonderful. I mean, it helped her out a lot, I'm sure. So.
Well, as best it can help any of us out, that when we lose someone, to know that this is the process that they go through. Right.
Absolutely. But but they really desire to be involved in that period of time. And that's the other thing I would tell you, the listeners, is that if they can, don't be afraid to talk about where they're heading. You don't have to mention the word death, because there is no death. It's birth. I consider myself an obstetrician to the next life. Okay, I'm delivering souls to the next life, and giving them morphine, sort of like the spinal tap, that women get. But ask them things, tell them things. What do you want us to do? How do you want your funeral? It's okay to talk about that. We should involve people in the most important part of our life.
Well, this should be part of some form of education, whether, it has to come in a book. Our ministers, should, in our Judeo-Christian world, should be talking about this with us, John. Well,
and you know what? I'm hopefully going to get this foundation going called Hearts Without Borders, and it is about that. It is to help promote hospice in rural areas, South America. I'm working with Venezuela right now, but it's really hard with Mr. Chavez. But more importantly is educating. I want to help. I want to lobby some senators out in Washington to get education into our children, first of all. Let's teach them during their health programs about death and dying, transitioning, whatever terms they want to use. And I'm telling you, the world will change. The world will change once they realize that. And I think that it will have so many effects on the positive. Economically, it'll probably drop the amount of money that's being spent at the end of life, because that's the greatest amount of money. It is destroying our economy because people are wanting to do everything at the end of their life. And that's because they don't want it to have the reality, and because they didn't sit down and talk about what do you want. I would have everyone get their living will done early on, because when you can't speak, someone's going to take over, and people don't want to feel guilty, so they're going to do everything they can to keep you alive.
That's excellent advice. The fear that people that permeates their whole being when someone that they love so deeply is dying is overwhelming.
Because we're not taught. Okay, you might still feel that, but I think if we spoke about this more, if churches would speak about this more, too much of the healing is done. And my patients were saying, you know what? There are verses in the Bible, and I'm not a big Bible buff, but there was one that says in 2 Corinthians chapter 5 that talks about to be in the body is to be separate from the other side, to be separate from God. Well, most fundamentalists are praying, oh, you've got to be healed. Well, what they're really doing is going against what if they believe in that, what the Bible is saying, what God's saying is it's their time to go, and all you're doing is trying to keep them away.
Yeah, you're prolonging it. Well, the other thing, if Christians were really paying attention to the teachings of Jesus, John 3:16, God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, and who shall ever believe in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life.
And you're exactly right. And Marla, of all the beings, there is at the end of the book, I did a real brief study with this doctor, compared to Dr. Carlos Osis, who used to be, he's passed away since, the head of the the American Psychic Institute out of New York. And he did this study. He was way ahead of the time back in the 70s and 60s. He interviewed doctors and nurses from all over the world to find out what these people were seeing as they were dying. And but most of these people were in hospitals, and so they had more of a negative experience. As opposed to my study that I compared it to, who were in hospice, had a more positive experience. Because we have our chaplain, our doctor, our team that helps educate at the end.
Our team to help us.
And, who did they see? Deceased loved ones right before, the same thing, 4 weeks before. And people always invariably ask me that, well, who did they see? What God did they see? Well, you know what? They saw a God, one God. They saw a supreme being that when he did appear, he would appear at the foot of the bed. He would kneel down and wash their feet in humility. This is the man that apparently, man, woman, however you want to look at it, who made us, who made this whole thing in humility, not standing up and saying, I am almighty.
Wow.
And that, when I hear these stories, it just it brings tears to my eyes.
Well, John, this has just been such a pleasure, and consider me part of your team. And thank you. Thank you for your book, Into the Light. And
blessings to everybody.
Thank you so much for this wonderful talk. This is Marla Fries for Dreamland.
One reporter who loves mysteries is radio's leading science journalist, Linda Moulton Howe. She's an Emmy Award-winning TV producer, documentary filmmaker, and the reporter and editor for EarthFiles.com, the Internet's most respected edge science website. Here she is from Albuquerque, Linda Moulton Howe.
Thanks, Whitley. And today on Dreamland, I'm picking up where I left off last week when I was in Dublin, Stephenville, Brownwood, and Glen Rose, Texas, to see for myself videotapes, photos, and drawings of those unusual aerial lights and craft that have been reported by dozens of residents there since New Year's Day. And in the first week of February, there have been 2 more reports of disc-shaped aerial lights and more unusual spherical plasmas hanging around those infrared deer feeder cameras in Brownwood that have the owners so puzzled and baffled. What is it that is hanging around in these regions in the air and close to the ground and glowing? Well, at the center of many of the local investigations is Leroy Gayton, the Erath County Constable in Precinct 2, Dublin, Texas. Leroy has been constable about 4 years and a police officer for 17 years. Not only is he investigating, he and his son were eyewitnesses themselves to remarkable aerial lights on January 8, 2008, when about 36 eyewitnesses in the Dublin-Stephenville area saw multiple lights pulsing, dancing, many said, erratically. Leroy lives with his wife, son, and daughter just south of Dublin. On Tuesday, January 8th, around 7 p.m. local time, he had walked out to his car to get a credit card so the family could rent a DirecTV movie. The 43-year-old Dublin law enforcement constable told me that in all of his life he had never seen such strange flashing or colors of lights in the sky.
As I'm walking back to the house, I noticed at first a red glow in the southwest sky. It was like a fiery red glow. It really wasn't like a light. It was more like a fiery-looking ball.
In the sky?
In the sky.
How high?
I'd say about 300, probably 300 feet away, and I'm basing that on a tree line that's across the road. Yeah, I'd say probably 400, maybe 500 yards away. I see this red glow. It catches my attention.
Is it moving?
No, it's not moving. It appears to be stationary. As I look, it slowly fades away, and I'm just stunned. Knowing that something's not right, well, to my surprise, it reappears. Right almost in a horizontal line, but a little bit further off to the west.
Does it fade in or pop in?
No, it seems to fade in, like if you'd slowly turn on a switch. But again, it doesn't look like a light. It looks more like the color is like a color I've never seen. It was like a fiery red. It wasn't bright red. It looked like it had like some of the yellow glow. Anyway, it reappears. And again, I sit there and look at it, and slowly disappears, fades away. At this time, I go inside my house, and I tell my wife, and she kind of like looks at me, and I go back outside. My 8-year-old boy follows me, and I look to the sky, hoping I'll see these red glows again. But instead, off to the west where I saw these red glows, I'd say probably 3,000 to 5,000 feet up in the air, I see these white flashes of light. These were bright, like almost an LED bright light, but it's not a regular flash. It's more like a strobe.
And some people have compared it to a magnesium arc torch.
I would say it was that bright. But what was so odd about these things is that they're moving around. They're not staying stationary. They're what I would call bouncing around in the sky. They would go horizontally, vertically, and not just on a straight line. They're spread out. They're just moving around, not staying in one place.
Random pattern?
There was no particular pattern, I guess you'd call it. I mean, they were just moving around.
But each light would come on and then go off, and another would come on and go off, and another would go...
Yes, and it made it look like this thing was just bouncing around. Well, me and my little boy sat there, and I asked my boy, and I said, how many do you see? He counted 10, I counted 9. At this time, I'm so stunned at what I'm seeing, I want to get a better look, don't know what it is. I go to my car, I get a pair of binoculars, and I try to focus in on one of the lights. Well, I'm having trouble because they're moving around, and finally when I do see, I can't see nothing but a light. I couldn't see an outline. I couldn't see that they were attached to anything. These lights are spread a good distance apart from each other. I sit there and I look at it for a while, and I'd say probably from the first time that I first saw the white lights maybe 2-3 minutes have elapsed, maybe not even that long. They stop bouncing around, but they continue strobing. And it does this for just a short, I'd say probably just a few seconds, 20 seconds.
Are all 9 or 10 simultaneoly coming on and off?
No, that was what was so strange about it. They were not doing it at the same time. You would have one here. What it looked like that this one would move over and reappear and flash over here. It was all like at different times. Anyway, what was so stunning is after a short time, they stopped bouncing around, like I said, maybe 2 minutes or so. And it's like if they were all attached to a string. All at one time, they just shoot off to the northeast sky at a blazing speed. I had trouble keeping up with my binoculars. It was that quick, and they were out of sight. I'm just sitting there thinking, like, what was this thing?
Like a school of fish.
Similar. Yeah, that's what I would compare it to. But they would leave all in one instance, in one movement. And to my knowledge, that I best recall, I do not remember an outline that I could draw that would indicate it was some type of craft. That was what was so stunning to me. In my opinion, there's nothing, no human body could withstand the G-force of the speed that these things shot off.
Now, Ricky Soils has sketched this huge object that he saw, that at least going into the woods with him and seeing what he meant about how far you could see standing in one position, and then he walked it off and estimated that it was about 3 football fields long from as far as he could see going one direction to the other, and estimated 3 football fields would be about 1,000 feet in diameter with all those cone-shaped embedded holes. Do you think that what he saw could be what you were seeing in the night sky, generating these lights from those cone-shaped holes?
At first, I initially thought maybe not. It could have been that, and it could have been this object maybe changing horizontally or vertically, moving around. You've got to consider that where I saw these, I'm estimating they're 3,000 to 5,000 feet up in the air. Maybe not that high, but they're spread out in a long distance. Me looking with the naked eye would be at the very least 1,000 feet.
Right. Could you talk about what law enforcement in the Dublin area have talked to you about seeing, even though they are reluctant to talk?
Yes. I first saw a video that was taken from a in-dash camera while an officer was on duty. It was not on the same night that I witnessed these lights.
Earlier or later?
It was that Saturday.
So it would have been around January 11th?
The 12th. I had the privilege to see this video, and according to the officer that I spoke with, I actually saw what he saw on video, and this object changed forms 3 different times. The first time, I believe it was, he said about 2 o'clock in the morning when he first saw it. It's a white glow, moving very slow in the sky, and then it changes from white to green to blue and red lights. It looks almost like a strobe. I watch this thing, and it appears to be some type of object that's maybe round. It's already changed from white to these different colors. He tells me, keep watching. I watch it approximately 8 minutes, and then this thing right in front of my eyes changes, and it looks almost to be like a jellyfish. And I compare it maybe even to a parachute. Very bright white. The green and blue and red is no longer flashing. And it holds this shape probably for about 2 minutes. And then, to my surprise, it changes vertically. It's like a line straight up and down.
It goes from a jellyfish to a line.
To a vertical line.
And is it a solid?
It appears to be solid. And it's white. Just a white, and it's no longer flashing. It's just a bright white light. It stays like that in that shape probably for a couple more minutes, and then it changes back to its original white and then goes back to the green, red, and blue flashing. And this thing is moving slowly. Ever so often, the officer's having to come into his vehicle and adjust his in-dash camera because it's moving. Well, he tells me that they see another object just like it about a mile behind this one. They didn't videotape the second one, but you can hear him talking about it. Well, they videotape it, and they're having to zoom in. This camera, I believe, zooms in 600 times, but you're still not able to see any type of craft. And I believe I watched it for, I'd say probably 16 minutes, and then it's out of sight. Well, I later find out I have a call from an officer to my residence from another agency. Well, he called me back on a Saturday morning, I believe it was the 19th, called me at my residence, and he tells me, he said, hey, I saw something January the 8th and 9th that you saw the lights. I asked him, what did you see? He said, I see this large object traveling at a very low rate of speed, about approximately 300, 400 feet in the air. He describes it to be approximately 2 to 3 football fields long. He describes it to look somewhat like a cigar with the ends both rounded off. He said he compared it almost to a wing of a 747. He said it was huge. He sees this thing, and it's blacked out.
Blacked out.
It doesn't have any lights on at the time.
And he's seeing it in silhouette
yes.
against...
He's seeing silhouette against the sky, which he claims was clear, and it was clear that particular night.
And what time was that?
I believe he said it was about 20 minutes after I saw what I saw. Closer to 8 o'clock when he saw it.
How do you see a dark silhouette against a black?
He said it was so huge because of the stars. I remember that particular night. He said the night that I saw these bright lights, it was a clear night. It was a cool, clear night.
And he is seeing a silhouette because it is blocking stars?
And he said it is huge. He said this thing is so huge. Wants to get on the radio because he's thinking it's an airliner that's going down. Then he said at that time he sees 2 bright lights. When it got close to the city, he said he saw 2 bright lights. He said they're amazing. He said they were so spread apart, these lights. He said, but they were like a color that he's never seen before. I asked him, did it look like an LED? He said, no. He said it was much brighter. Anyway, he said that this thing comes into the city, and he said at that time he sees 2 red lights that are on top. It appears to be like on 2 different antennas. Said he sits there and watches this thing moving very slowly.
Over Dublin?
No, over Stephenville. He sees this thing where he tells me it's around the courthouse downtown. Meantime, he's gotten a call. He's got to go back to the police department. Police department is located close to the courthouse. He said this thing turns towards the east sky, but it's no longer horizontal, it's vertical. And he said it's traveling at a low rate of speed, and he said he cannot believe that it was able to stay in the air by the way it turned. He said that the last time he saw it, it didn't disappear. It was still there. He went and took care of his business. There is another officer. He would not say a whole lot other than he saw it towards the Selden area, just outside of Stephenville. But these officers are afraid to speak publicly in fear of their job. They wouldn't go into detail, but they're terrified that they would possibly jeopardize their employment.
Do you have any understanding why?
I have no idea. In my position, I do not have supervisor, boss. The people of Erath County are my boss, so it would take thousands of people for me to lose my job. And in a way, I can see, now I've heard rumors that one of the local agency heads was concerned.
About military?
That possibly military was going to come and review one of the videotapes, the videotape that I saw. Now, whether that's true or not, I do not know. That's hearsay.
Have you had any communication, direct or indirect, in any form, by any military authority?
Not that I can confirm. I did have at least 3 phone calls. By the questions they asked, I wondered if possibly they had been put up by the military. Most of the numbers that I received on my phone were registered. These 3 particular just showed a call, and that really doesn't mean anything, but they never gave me a number where I could call them back. They just filled me in on what their opinion, what it was. One of them claimed to have worked on projects by the military. So it's hard to say. I can't say conclusively that I know they were military. They were somewhat just really going out of the way to persuade me that it was a military project and nothing else, and nothing of an alien-type craft or whatever it is I'd seen. One particular gentleman even went in trying to explain to me what I saw. And I said, no, I disagree with you. Another gentleman was telling me we have some things in the military, and that's what led me to believe that maybe he was military by the way he was talking to me. So it made me really wonder.
Yeah, that this is an effort to bias your mind as constable.
Right.
And that it would have been inspired by some order given to some authority, military or otherwise, to call people that they would think would have influence on the public.
Right.
Now, can you explain why, as a 17-year-long police officer who is now constable in Dublin, Texas, why you do not think that this is a terrestrial, human-made object?
The speed, the way these things were moving around, I mean, the military may have something out there that can do this, but in my opinion, it would have to be unmanned for sure. There is no way that I can imagine a human being able to withstand the G-force of the speed.
At my EarthFiles.com news report interview with Dublin Constable Leroy Gayton, I have 2 sketches that he gave me of the policeman's eyewitness account of the very long cigar-shaped aerial craft with a red light on each of 2 antennas sticking up vertically from a huge aerial cigar-shaped craft. Underneath, that police officer saw holes embedded in the bottom and sketched them, very similar to the huge craft with cone-shaped embedded holes seen by Ricky Sorrells, also in Dublin, on January 1st, New Year's Day, 2008. So, Whitley, there are many unprecedented descriptions here, and how unusual to hear from police officers who have seen during their work these huge objects that you would think might even need to be reported for national security reasons, but tell the constable that they are afraid of losing their job if they talk.
Well, Linda, that was quite a report. Folks, next week on Dreamland, have you ever wondered, and I'm sure you have, just what this means to celebrities, rock stars, and so forth? Do they see these things too? Do they have close encounters of the third kind? Well, Michael Luckman has made a wonderful study of this and talked to a lot of them, and the answers are surprising.
Energy around them, coming towards them, not communicating with them yet, something which I found out later, they're waiting for the person to invite them in. And what I've heard, it's a lot about your free will, that the other side really, truly respects free will. So they wait until you ask them in or you invite them. And most people will say, who are you? What are you doing? And at that point, they come in and this is who we are. We're here to comfort you. And it's almost like the hospice on the other side, the comforting part of the other dimension. And they come in and they start reviewing their life, and nowhere near this fire and brimstone thing, okay? And that is
that's good news.
That is what really pushed me to want to write this book. I said, I was raised Catholic, and my mom is part Japanese and some Buddhist. I'm a Buddha-cast, I guess, a New Age Buddha-cast.
I like that.
I'm not sure what that means, but at any rate, I'm really pretty open. I'm not religious. I'm a scientist with a real big feeling of spirituality and comfort for the human being. And but yeah, these people come in and they're very comforting, non-condemning, non-judgmental, and these people who are dying think they're going to be condemning and judgmental.
And they're not.
And they're not. And once they get over that, that's what they're sharing with me during these experiences. And just telling me that these people are loving, that they're wanting them to understand that the key to the condemnation and the judgment is not from God or whoever is on the other side that created us, who we never really ever see, on a day-to-day basis, and then we're supposed to be going to hell if we don't do the right thing. Well, that's all just a bunch of, it's just a farce.
Right. You say in your book Okay.
It really is. It really is. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh no, you're just saying you're reiterating what you say in the book, which is there's allowances in interpretation of the Bible and all of the religious teachings that we've been
not just the Bible, the Quran, the Torah, name it. Every little the Tibetan book of the dead, the Egyptian book of the dead. All of them. It's just human nature. Who wrote these things? How do we know that, it was an inspiration from God is what they say. That's how the religious leaders say that. Oh, it was an inspired word of God. Well, the one thing that is just common, and now, the reality now, I said 2,000, but it really in reality, indirectly, it's been over 30 or 40,000 that I have interviewed.
30 or, wow.
40,000, yes ma'am.
Staggering.
That's over about a 15-year period. Most of those were not directly my patients, but the doctors would allow me to go in and interview these people. And I'm telling you, 99.9999% had a very exhilarating to probably survive. And it was this gentleman that provided probably an awe-inspiring information about the afterlife. He had a near-death experience.
Oh, great.
And the book is more really about pre-death experiences, people who are still consciously aware of what's going on in their environment. They have not died yet, but they're seeing what the near-death people are seeing.
Well, it's really fascinating, John, because you talk about them seeing a lot of angelic beings.
Yes. And when I say angelic beings, it's really more spiritual beings.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's probably less angels, if you say the typical winged angel. I don't think they see that's that common. What people do see is energy. They see people lit up, shapes of people coming in, usually around 4 weeks before. We almost got it down to a science now.
Wow.
It really is incredible. After the first 500, after the first 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 patients, you start seeing the same thing. And it's transcultural, trans-religion. It Muslims, Christians, Buddhists, murderers, atheists, agnostics.
Right.
They're all seeing the same thing. And
tell us, what are they seeing?
They're seeing at 4 weeks before they're dying, while they're still doing pretty well, a person, a very well-lit person, I guess a lot of.
This is Whitley Strieber's Dreamland. Expert hosts like William Henry on Secrets of the Past, Jim Mars on Politics and Conspiracy, Ann Strieber on Matters of the Spirit, and Whitley Strieber on Aliens, UFOs, and who knows what else. And weekly science reporter, Emmy Award winner Linda Moulton Howe. We say it like it is. We take you deeper, down where the real secrets lie. Dreamland. Welcome to the edge of the world.
Welcome to Dreamland. This is Marla Fries, and I'm your host today. My guest is Dr. John Lerma, who currently serves as the inpatient medical director for the internationally renowned TMC Hospice, located in the heart of the largest medical center in the world, the Medical Center of Houston, Texas. After graduating with honors from the University of Texas in Austin with a pharmacy degree, he entered the University of Texas San Antonio Medical School and received his board certification in both internal medicine as well as hospice medicine. For the last 10 years, he has spent his time taking care of the terminally ill. And he has successfully interviewed thousands of terminally ill patients and recorded over 500 conversations with patients on the verge of death. His book, Into the Light, shares some of those amazing pre-death and afterlife stories. Welcome, Dr. John Lerma. My first question to you, John, is what does no harm mean?
Do no harm means let's keep everybody comfortable. Let's not put them in the ICU on a ventilator without their family. And it was something that I just really, truly believed, and something Whitley and I had, when Whitley was living in San Antonio, I would talk to him about a lot of these stories that I started hearing, these people telling me things as they were dying, and it was these AIDS patients. And it wasn't just the typical IV drug users. These were women and children who were being affected, and it really just touched my heart.
Right.
And,
well, there's the story when you were in San Antonio that you speak about in the book where there was a car accident of 5 people.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. That was probably one of the greater impetus into leading me into more of the research. And it was I was an intern at that point, and there's a certain amount of people in the ER, and in the ER you triage the people with the greatest percentage for survival will get the top dogs in the medical field, the surgeons, the orthopedic surgeons, and people who really don't have much chance for survival will get they'll still get great care, but they'll involve the resident and the intern. And I got involved in one patient who probably 70, 80 plus year old gentleman, Hispanic, who had a heart attack and didn't appear to